Hey everyone, today's video is going to be a sadder one, but one that I feel is absolutely important to discuss. That is the treatment of K-pop fans and just the views on K-pop in India. I'll be talking about why this hate exists and the forms in which it takes place. This is possibly my most highly requested video, and a lot of you have been asking me to address this topic for a long time. But I was initially hesitant as I didn't want in any way to paint India as negative just because of how certain people act and behave. There is already a lot of negative media coverage about India, and I didn't necessarily want to contribute to that. But I decided to go ahead with this topic since ignoring it felt like I wasn't really helping, but instead just sweeping an issue under the rug. Besides, this kind of mistreatment isn't exclusive to just one place. When I posted about working on this video, a lot of you DM'd me saying you'd experienced similar mistreatment in your own cities and countries. The countries that I got DM'd to talk about were mostly South Asian and Middle Eastern countries, and we'll get to the reasons behind that soon. But that doesn't mean that this kind of behavior is only exclusive to those regions. The only reason I'm going to be focusing more on India in this video is since I got the most requests from Indian subscribers, and also I have Indian family members on one side of my family, and so I'm more familiar with Indian culture compared to these other countries, and I wouldn't feel comfortable just speaking about a country I had no knowledge of. But just to be sure, I did ask a lot of my Indian subscribers to send in their experiences and insight on this issue so I could make a video that was as accurate as it could be. So if you're Indian, please don't feel like I'm trying to offend you in any way. I understand that since I've personally never lived in India, I don't have the best understanding. But hopefully through my research and getting insight from Indian K-pop fans, I can do my best to represent this topic. And trust me, stick around because it's not all negative. Again, I feel the need to reiterate that India is a beautiful country, but like most places, there are certain cracks in there that cause the whole foundation to shake. So I encourage you all to check out all the beautiful spots, people, and messages of India and not just rely on this video alone to paint a picture of what the entirety of India is like. Because while my video today is about very disappointing circumstances, it is not the representation of the entire country and population as a whole. And with all of that covered, now we can get into the treatment of K-pop fans in India. So by reading through the messages that I have received from my Indian subscribers, thank you again to everyone who shared. I know that some of the experiences that you mentioned could not have been easy to talk about, but they were very insightful and I appreciate your contribution. I have seen that a huge portion of this hate comes from boys or men. Here I refer to cisgendered heterosexual men. And the main aspects or basis for this hate is of course homophobia, toxic masculinity, and misogyny. So let's elaborate briefly on these points. Before we get into the discussion of homophobia and toxic masculinity, it is important to first look into the ideal image of a man in India versus in Korea, or at least the ideal media representation. Watching any Bollywood movies would show you that the quote perfect man is rugged, taller, and more of the stereotypical representation of masculinity, with no distinct marks of makeup or cosmetics, and a strong presence of facial hair with a strapping body type. Contrastingly, in K-pop, the ideal male image is what we would describe as the pretty boy, being clean-cut, gentler, and younger looking. It is quite common for men to use makeup to highlight their features. This stark difference is already going to be making it quite obvious why there is a conflict. Moreover, the role of women or feminine attributes is still considered inferior by large groups of people in countries like India. And while that doesn't really mean that activists aren't making significant strides in women's rights issues in India, we are still all painfully aware that misogyny is still quite common in Indian society. Like dismissing a woman's needs, wants, and emotions, while concerns posed by men are heard loud and clear. A tepid example of this could be associating things like makeup, the color pink, or Barbie, or artists like One Direction, Justin Bieber, and now BTS to young girls, and then dismissing these things as lame, dumb, or even bullying girls and women, making jokes about their interests because, God forbid, a girl can like something without it being scrutinized and ridiculed, right?
There's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you.
And it's not just that Barbies are for girls or that BTS fans are all girls. It's about the association. Like a fat person is always associated with unhealthiness, no matter how fit they actually might be. So people who have always been taught and raised in this chokehold of rigid masculinity see these men in K-pop with makeup on, jewelry, getting their hair done, and associate these features as stereotypically feminine, and thus consider these men to be inferior. And anyone who looks up to them is considered stupid. Why would you like this weird clean-cut girly man when an actual man is supposed to be handsome, buff, and hairy? Of course, we aren't mature and respectful enough to let women like what they want to like and be respectful about their choices, right? And it's not that these haters necessarily think about all of these levels, because a mindset like this isn't just developed in a day. These kinds of ideals, rules, and categories have existed in all societies and all countries since forever. You've been taught all your life that 2 plus 2 equals 4. So when someone tells you that's not true, it's not only going to take you a while to remember and adapt, but you might also straight out dismiss any thoughts that go against what you've been taught your entire life.
No ma'am. No ma'am. No ma'am. No ma'am.
You've been told women have long hair, men have short. Women are hairless, men are hairy, women wear skirts and dresses, men wear pants and suits. It's all neatly laid out in your mind in a table ever since you were a little baby. So when you see representations that don't necessarily fit this categorization, you see it as dysfunctional, incorrect, and worthy of being criticized. That's why it's important to note how different the ideal male in K-pop versus Indian society is. Even in certain parts of Korea, there are still people who believe that men in K-pop are too feminine.
그러면 좀 민감한 질문일 수 있는데 이왕 오셨으니까 힙합은 사실 또 어떻게 보면 좀 남성적이고 뭐 마초성이 좀 있는 문화이기도 하고 여기 이제 분들 뭐 디플로우님 이제 보시면 남성적인 외모를 가지고 계시잖아요.
네, 맞습니다.
근데 그 이런 래퍼들이 뭐 가사에서 예를 들어서 폴트 앨범에도 뭐 그런 구절이 있어요. 뭐 게이 같은 외모 남자로 돌려놔 뭐 이런 구절도 있거든요. 근데 이런 것들이 뭐 방탄소년단이 무대에 올라갔을 때 뭐 분장을 한다거나 뭐 이런 것들에 대해 그런 것들에 대해 방탄소년단이 무대에 올라갔을 때 뭐 이제 분장을 한다거나 어떤 메이크업을 하는 거에 대한 어떤 힙합과 충돌되는 부분이 있을 것 같은데
분장 그런 게 아니라 여자.
Wow, shut the front door. Come on.
아 그래요? 여자같이 입고 다니는 게 여자냐?
Shut up! Shut the fuck up, okay? Do you? And stop calling yourself a boss because you're not a boss girl or boss babe. You're a loser.
But it's still mostly accepted because it has existed for a while, and because of its large following, the Korean public have been exposed to it for a long time, and it has slowly adapted into the ideals. But in India, this doesn't really happen. The society hasn't been exposed to this kind of male representation. Therefore, the hate and apprehension, although disgusting in its forms, is to be expected. You can't really expect a person who's always been raised to see men in only one specific look to completely understand and accept when they're told that men can look like anything. They don't have to stick to any rules of masculinity to be seen and be identified as men. It'll take time for them to shake out their old mindset. The level this initial apprehension is taken to, however, is disgusting. Moving on to homophobia. Even today, same-sex marriages are not legally recognized in India. In fact, homosexuality was only legalized in India in 2018. And this is not to say that the Indian government represents what the public as a whole feel about LGBTQ issues, but it does shed some light. A lot of my Indian subscribers have also DM'd me asking for advice as they feel trapped in their society as someone who is LGBTQ, often fearing the reaction they would get if they came out to their homophobic, heteronormative family and friends. And as someone who hasn't had to face the difficulty of that issue, all I could do was provide support. So it's not a stretch to say that while there are certain LGBTQ communities in India that advocate for and spread awareness about LGBTQ rights, the country as a whole is still either homophobic or ignorant on this issue, especially older people who aren't as exposed to the internet. This is something that is also true in Korea and most Asian countries, and as a whole, the LGBTQ community is marginalized in some way or the other around the world. Due to lack of education on gender and sexuality studies, people grow up thinking that being gay is super rare or wrong, when the reality is that oftentimes many LGBTQ people have to hide their true selves in fear of their safety. And that is why young kids in school think it's okay to bully other kids by calling them gay, thinking that's an insult. A lot of you message me saying that people bullied you for listening to K-pop because they considered these men to be, quote, gay or trans, etc. Thinking labels like these are offensive, which they're not. Mislabeling someone without knowledge or consent, especially for malicious intents, is, however, offensive. And that is exactly what they do when they see a male idol in K-pop or a fanboy of K-pop. It doesn't matter to them if that idol or that person is actually in the LGBTQ community. Their intention is to belittle someone by labeling them with what they believe is an insult. So many of you fanboys DM'd me about how exhausting it is to have to constantly justify your interests and have to explain to people how your music taste does not determine your sexuality or identity. And of course, babies aren't born homophobic. This comes down from their parents, who get it from their parents, who get it from their parents, and well, you know. So as much as it sucks how ignorant these kids can be, it's even worse when you find out that their parents, whole-ass adults, probably double their age, carry similar, if not worse, thoughts on the subject. Furthermore, due to lack of proper education on the subject, they aren't aware that the LGBTQ community comes in every single look, size, and shape. There isn't a default gay look, and there never has been one. It is just a stereotype that people apply onto this community that can often be very hurtful. But to these people, any man who looks feminine would be considered gay, and any woman that looks masculine is of course a lesbian, because someone didn't teach them not to judge a book by the cover. Additionally, I will be discussing this more later on in the video when I talk about how this harassment is subjected onto K-pop fans, but I think it's important to mention it here as well. When it comes to boys, usually between the age of 13 to somewhere around the early 30s, according to my research and online accounts, these happen to be the scariest, most confrontational demographic. Moving away from just verbal insults to threats and even assault. Just wait until we get to the threatening DMs. This is taken to a point where K-pop fans have to avoid wearing their merch in public or speaking about their interests in public. And this very clearly comes from a place of insecurity, being raised in a society where they are told to stick to this standard of toxic masculinity, and then later realizing they've become the types of men that almost everyone hates. That is aggressive, possessive, dominating, vain, etc. Then they come online and see the millions of people showering these K-pop boys with love, and that confuses them. How are these men who are not following these societal rules seen as appealing when I've spent my whole life suppressing what I've actually wanted to be to adopt this hyper-masculine persona and still be rejected? And this is not to say that all hypermasculine men are bigoted. Not at all. However, secure masculinity does not come from following these meaningless stereotypes and rules. It comes from your personality and your own identity. And I think John Cena is a huge example of this. That man can pick you up and throw you from Stockholm to Madrid, and then also do the whole BTS chant while dancing to Mic Drop. You can't let society describe who you want to be or what being a man means. You describe that. Just like there isn't a default model of what a gay man looks or acts like, there still isn't a default model of what a straight man is supposed to look or act like. Be yourself and let other people be themselves. There are already so many things to stress about, so let's not be the reason for someone else's unhappiness. So that was a long rant. Now let's move on to the next reason, which is bandwagon hater, having fear of being ridiculed for stepping away from what the norm is. A common theme in a lot of your DMs was your own past as a K-pop hater, and a lot of you explained that you honestly didn't have a clear idea of what you were hating on. It was more because you wanted to fit in with your peers. You liked what they liked and hated what they hated, or else you would be on the receiving end of the bullying. And I am sure that is still the case for a lot of haters. So if you're one of them, I don't know why you would be watching this video, but if you are, it's literally alright to step away from these crazy norms. When you're in school, spending hours literally every day, it makes it seem like your life begins and ends with school and the people around you. And if they don't like you, who will, right? But it's so much better to have no company than bad company. School is not who you are, especially in the Asian schooling system where individuality is literally crushed into a tiny little ball and thrown in the trash. And this is not to say that anyone who doesn't like K-pop isn't valid. While my video is about K-pop, this point applies to everyone. If people around you make you feel inferior or stupid or bully you for what you like, especially when that interest of yours brings you a lot of joy, those people aren't worth being around. Don't let them define who you are. That's your job, bestie. Because I know everyone says this, but I'm everyone, so I'm gonna say it too. Stop wasting your days being someone that someone else wants you to be. There are high chances you're not gonna see these people from school ever again in your life in the future, but you are gonna regret spending days, months, even years hiding your true self to impress these morons. The only person you need to keep happy is you. Okay, gross. Feelings time is over now. Back to the video. A short note for the next point. Unlike the last point, I can't really say that this behavior is either exclusive to India and South Asian countries or just more common. However, it is still something that occurs, so I feel that it is fitting that I mentioned it briefly. But just keep in mind that although this does happen, it is not something that is commonly associated with India and actually happens all around the world. Since all of that was more focused on male idols, I don't want anyone to think that female idols have it easy. They don't, trust me. So now it's time to discuss the topics that heavily affect female idols in K-pop. So to protect this video from getting flagged as inappropriate, I wanted to let you know that for my rant ahead, I will be referring to this as stunt shaming, but only you and I will know what it means. So I would say there are two extremes when it comes to the treatment of female idols. Of course, we all know that beauty ideals, body ideals, behavior rules, etc. are applied much heavily to female idols than they are to male. But if we are looking specifically into India, I would say the most prominent forms are over-sexualization and stunt shaming. Yep, the two extremes. First, let's talk about over-sexualization. Now, if people want to see some of these adult female idols as sexy, sure, go ahead. There isn't anything wrong with that necessarily unless a person explicitly states their discomfort. But doing the same to underage idols is disgusting, and hopefully I don't have to spell out why. But also what we are talking about is not just merely finding someone sexy, we're talking about over-sexualization. That is not noticing the depth of an idol's talents, personality, etc., and only looking at these women as sexual objects, which we all know is a huge problem that women already face. But this fetishization is a common occurrence when it comes to Asian women. These are some articles that I read that outlined how scary, uncomfortable, and dehumanizing it feels to be fetishized as an Asian woman. Having so many important parts of your personality and identity ignored just because to some people the only thing that matters is your body. Having your national identity and ethnicity reduced to a fetish is also disgusting. In this instance specifically, over-sexualized games with East Asian features as well as a certain side of over-sexualized anime also contribute to the way Asian women are seen. Instead of watching these performances as fans would, that is noticing their skills, moves, etc., some people have their attention set elsewhere, and it's demeaning. I would love to talk about this sort of over-sexualization in another video, as I feel like there are so many more aspects to it, but it wouldn't be fair for me to discuss it here since these behaviors are not limited to Indian or South Asian men. Next, we have stunt shaming, the way women are simultaneously sexualized but then shamed for being sexual in any way is so hypocritical. An example that shoots into my mind straight away is when a news channel in India referred to Blackpink as Chinese strippers. A channel called News Nation TV aired a news segment related to the scrutiny of the Chinese government. But of course, there are some very ignorant people that have trouble distinguishing between two completely different countries and refer to Blackpink, a Korean girl group with 3 Korean and 1 Thai member, as Chinese strippers. The way they manage to be racist, ignorant, and sexist in one tiny sentence is actually astonishing. Coming back to the regular public that K-pop fans usually encounter in India, even though clothes like these are quickly becoming a part of Indian fashion, seen among celebrities, models, and now even regular people, it is still something that some people think is okay to comment on and belittle. They immediately associate shorter clothes or more revealing clothes as something that is slutty or sinful, which is such an outdated statement. But again, it's not that these people are pointing this out as concern or an innocent observation. They're doing this to bring down these women, associating sex work and other related professions as something inferior and demeaning, which it is not. And this happens to celebrities in India as well, because of course, even in 2022, we're not done with other people or society telling women what they should wear, how they should look, etc. There is a very prominent xenophobic aspect to it as well, but since it goes into very political topics, I will refrain from speaking on them as I feel like I'm not very educated on that subject, but it is important to note that it does exist. And now that we've seen how and why these kinds of hate against K-pop develop, let's now move on to the actions or the treatment that many Indian K-pop fans have to deal with on a daily basis. Before I begin, I just want to say that if any of you are dealing with anything similar, please never hesitate to DM me or reach out to me anywhere you can. Even if I don't give good advice, I will be there to hear you out. Let's start off with comments from friends and family. A lot of you related horror stories from the holiday time, sharing how your family came together to basically point out everything wrong with what you like. So basically K-pop. From the aunt who believes every K-pop idol is in the Illuminati to the uncle that thinks they're all devil worshippers here to steal innocent people's money. And as funny as it may sound to us, just listening to it, it must be super annoying to have to sit and listen to your family, people who are literally supposed to support you, insult the very thing that you love and enjoy. Another common theme is parents, siblings, or friends being homophobic to your favorite idols, and one of you actually shared how fearful it made you as a closeted lesbian. And I wonder how many people have their favorite sport teams, or favorite cars, or favorite movies ridiculed compared to K-pop fans. So many of us have learned to hide these interests and barely talk about them in fear of being bullied. I mean, I started my channel because back in high school, everyone was discussing their Spotify Wrapped, and mine was mostly, if not completely, K-pop. Someone decided to look at my phone and embarrass me by saying my music taste was bad. Well, they said worse things, but you get the gist. And as hurtful as I felt at the time, I've never seen any of those losers since high school. But guess who I still listen to every day? And guess whose music and videos still make me feel good, make me laugh, and inspire me to be my best self? And obviously, my experience is nowhere near as traumatic as what some of you have dealt with. And I understand that my advice is coming from a somewhat privileged standpoint, which makes this whole situation so much sadder. And K-pop fans don't only fear getting belittled for their music taste, because in a lot of cases, these idols we look up to share similar characteristics, ideals, and dreams. They often become a part of us in a not creepy way. So many of us are inspired by various K-pop idols, so when these idiots with no emotional awareness attack and insult these idols, they also put down a very real part of you. It's bad enough to deal with it at home, but hey, you gotta wake up every day and go to school and deal with it there too. How did we go from sharing crayons and Legos to hitting others, shoving them in lockers, locking them in bathrooms, just because of what kind of music they listen to? And we're all aware that the school administration is about as helpful as a band-aid when your leg is broken. And the funny thing is, I can guarantee that these bullies who act like K-pop is the worst thing to ever exist haven't actually sat down to listen to a song without any protest. They haven't even given it an actual chance because they know as soon as those opening notes play, they may be able to lie, but their hips won't. And it's not that K-pop is just pop. There's literally every genre for every person. People just like to hate on it because for the first time ever, Asian musicians are starting to get the recognition that white artists have been handed on a silver platter. These same people pretend to act woke, but then turn around to call these idols several slurs just for winning an award over their faves. Like, it's just music, sweetheart. Why are you so pressed? So anytime these assholes try to make you feel shitty, just remember they're probably incompetent and have to overcompensate by bullying you. So good on you. You would never need to stoop to that level. And now I'm starting to lose my voice, so please bear with me, we're almost done. Which also reminds me, if you've made it so far into the video, please consider subscribing to my channel and liking this video. It takes a lot of effort to make these, so I would really appreciate it. And now to even more serious forms of harassment. The first and most common is threatening DMs, from slurs to threats. These grown-ass adults take time out of their pathetic day to write such horrific messages to kids. I know the internet has made it really easy for people to hide behind their profile sharing good morning quotes, with a bio saying something like treat people with kindness, only to turn around and message these fans death threats and homophobic and racist remarks. One of you even asked me for help dealing with hate when someone targeted your K-pop art account, writing a hate comment on each of your posts. And folks, this hater's bio was, "I'd rather be dead than unkind." And lastly, the most serious form of hate, harassment in the streets. So I briefly talked about this in a now deleted video where I talked about a similar kind of negative treatment that K-pop fans have to deal with in Bangladesh. But similar things happen in India as well. Grown-ass adults harassing young kids in the streets, shoving, threatening, and cursing at them just because a kid decided to wear a fucking Shooky t-shirt to the mall. And I won't be putting in any clips as they usually get flagged as inappropriate, because they are. And I know I'm repeating myself here, but I just can't wrap my head around how someone can think this is okay. How can you go to bed at night and sleep peacefully after harassing and bullying innocent people for something as trivial as music taste? Normal, everyday stuff like walking alone, riding the subway or a bus, going to the mall, all become sources of anxiety because of situations like these. And no one does anything to stop it because we all know it's K-pop fans who are too sensitive and dramatic. It's not like we get put down everywhere we go just because of what we like to listen to. Maybe think about that the next time you decide to playfully mock any of your friends. It's not playful when it's the 10th time that day we've had to hear it. So that was a lot of negativity, but like I said, I don't want the negative experiences to narrate how K-pop is treated in India. Yes, there are a lot of ignorant assholes, but there are also so many fans creating charities, making huge donations, and spreading awareness against racist, sexist, and homophobic mindsets. So here is a little slideshow of all the wonderful things that have come from Indian. As a closing note, I want to share this message with all Indian K-pop fans or just fans who face similar situations. I know how exhausting it can be to wake up every day and just have to hear belligerent insults about the things you admire, having your likes, interests, and passions constantly being put down, and in even more serious cases, your identity. And I want you all to know that there are people here for you. People like me and the wonderful supportive community that we've built here. I know some days can get pretty hard and people never really understand the true weight of getting bullied. So many people are like, oh, so you're depressed because someone said they don't like the music you listen to. Wow, dramatic. But as we've discussed, that's not even close to all of it. So trust me when I say there are people here who understand how you feel. And if you ever need someone to talk to, whether it be for advice or just to share your thoughts, feel free to reach out to me anywhere. And also you can join my Discord server with over 1,000 amazing members. We all want someone we can share our interests with, and it sucks that some people don't let us have that. That is all for this video. I know it wasn't as funny as my usual ones, but this topic was more serious, and I felt it wouldn't really be appropriate for me to put in my usual shits and giggles, especially when we are talking about such a heavy issue. If you found this video to be helpful or informative in any way, please like this video and comment to boost engagement. And also subscribe because I am very passionate about these kinds of topics and usually try my best to cover them objectively. Thank you again for watching and supporting me, and I will see you in my next video. Until then, stay safe and continue to love what you love despite what anyone else has to say.